Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Danny from Orchid Nature. So today we're going to talk about how to properly care for Phalaenopsis orchids. Now Phalaenopsis is the most popular orchid out there, and for good reason. It's the most varied and the flowers can last for several months. Now the Phalaenopsis orchid is an epiphyte orchid, and this is very important to understand in order to care for it properly. Epiphyte orchids don't grow in soil like most of our other houseplants. Instead, in nature, they grow attached to tree trunks, so they love extra ventilation around their roots. If we were to plant our Phalaenopsis orchid in soil, we will have a dead orchid in no time. So let's start off by talking about the potting media we have to use with it. Now on the market, you can find a wide variety of potting media for orchids. This media contains mainly bark chips, but some mixes can contain coconut husk or charcoal or even bits of sphagnum moss. There are those mixes which have peat moss. I would recommend you stay away from them, because the peat moss can suffocate the root system. If you want to play it safe, just use bark chips. This is actually my preferred media for Phalaenopsis orchids, and they seem to really love it. Regarding the pot, I like to use clear plastic pots because I can see how the roots are developing, if I have a problem with the root system and I can detect it in time, and also it can help me figure out when I need to water the orchid. Other people use ceramic pots. Now the thing I don't like about them is the fact that the roots get really clinged to it, so when I want to repot it, I have to break a lot of the roots. This really doesn't happen with plastic pots. Another reason why I like to use clear plastic pots is because the roots actually can photosynthesize. The size of the pot has to be adapted to your orchid. It needs to contain the root system of the orchid, but also the roots need to stay snug in there. Don't try to pot a small little orchid in a very big pot. It can stale and it can focus more on producing roots than producing flowers. Additionally, I like to provide some extra ventilation holes on the sides of the pot. In garden centers or flower shops, you can find plastic pots that already have slits in them. I cannot find any, so I have to provide these holes by myself. In the description, you'll find a link on my method. I actually use a heated nail, but you can be creative about it. Now this extra ventilation will keep you very safe from root rot, which can be caused by suffocation of the roots and the media staying too moist for too long. By using a clear pot, you can see when you need to water your orchid. So let's talk about watering now, because I think on the internet there is a lot of very confusing information. So you'll most probably hear the saying that orchids don't like to be overwatered. But what does it mean? And I've actually encountered people who thought that we shouldn't provide a large quantity of water to the orchid. Now this has nothing to do with it. Actually, orchids do prefer a lot of water. They like to be soaked really well. What you should be careful with is how often you actually water. So the easiest way to know when to water a Phalaenopsis orchid is by looking at the roots. If the roots are bright green, it means the orchid is hydrated and you don't have to water it. But if the roots look silvery or gray, the orchid could use some water and you're safe to water it. If you're not sure if you should water, wait another day or two. This will not harm the plant and you can actually avoid watering too often. Always use lukewarm water. Don't water with ice cubes, don't water with very cold water, and don't use very hot water. Lukewarm or room temperature water is what you need for a Phalaenopsis orchid. Cold or hot water can actually damage the root system. You can actually use tap water if it's not very hard. So you'll need to find out the hardness of your tap water. You can also use rainwater or distilled water, but keep in mind that it's pure and it doesn't have any minerals, so you'll have to add a small amount of fertilizer with each watering. Once a month, you can water with plain water to flush out all the salts that may have accumulated in the pot. Speaking about fertilizers, Phalaenopsis orchids are heavy feeders and will greatly benefit from fertilizing. Never use multi-purpose fertilizers, always go for the ones especially created for orchids. In the spring and summer, when the orchid is in vegetative growth, which means it's producing roots or leaves, I like to use a high nitrogen fertilizer. This one has a higher quantity of the first number you will see on the label. In the autumn or winter, when flower spikes usually emerge, I like to switch to a bloom booster. This is actually a fertilizer that contains more phosphorus, or a higher middle number. The frequency of fertilizing will actually depend on you and your routine. I like to fertilize every 2 weeks with half the amount recommended on the label. And this is because I use tap water, which already contains some minerals, and I don't want to overfeed my orchid. Between fertilizing, I like to use plain water just to flush out the pot and eliminate all the salts that may have accumulated. Whatever your routine is, don't overdo it. Don't ever fertilize more than it's specified on the label. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about light requirements. The Phalaenopsis orchid is really not picky regarding light. Phalaenopsis orchids prefer intermediate light. You really don't have to keep it in direct sunshine because the leaves might burn. If you have an eastern exposure which can provide direct sunshine only in the morning, that would be just great. Southern and western exposures need to be partially shaded. So the bottom line is, you want to have bright shade for your orchid. Don't keep it in too much shade either. An easy way to tell is to look at the color of the leaves. If the leaves are very dark green, they're not receiving enough light. But if they're very bright green, you might have to reduce the light levels. Keep in mind that some varieties are naturally darker or lighter. Regarding temperatures, they like the same temperatures that you like, so about 18 degrees Celsius at night and about 25 or 26 degrees during daytime would be perfect for them. If the temperature is lower than 18 degrees, some hybrids can actually lose buds. And if the temperature is too high, the leaves might become limpy and the orchid can get dehydrated. So as long as you feel comfortable, your orchid will be happy as well. Now, in order for a Phalaenopsis orchid to produce a flower spike, it needs a drop in temperature during nighttime, usually at the beginning of autumn. So if you can provide 18 degrees or 17 degrees during nighttime, it should be enough to stimulate a flower spike. I have a video on how to induce blooming on Phalaenopsis orchids, so if you visit the description, you'll find more information there. Once the flower spike is initiated, you can bring your orchid inside and keep it warm. A very common problem with Phalaenopsis orchids is crown rot, and this is obtained by watering your orchid from above and leaving water standing in the crown of the orchid. So when you water, make sure you don't leave any standing water between the leaves or in the center of the leaves. If there's any water, pick it up with a napkin. I usually like to soak my Phalaenopsis orchids rather than water them from the faucet. You can use a decorative pot or any kind of bowl that can contain the orchid pot. Place the orchid inside, leave it for a few minutes to soak, then take it off, drain it very well, and then put it back in its place. You can re-water when you see that the roots are silvery gray again. Now, from the moment the flower spike starts till the time it will bloom, it can take 2 to 3 months. Usually in warmer temperatures they will develop faster. But the good thing is the flowers can last up to 6 months in a Phalaenopsis orchid. Now, there's a whole discussion on where to cut the flower spike, or if you should cut a flower spike on a Phalaenopsis orchid, but I will do a separate video for that, because there's a lot to talk about, so look forward for that. For now, I would just like to mention that there is a lot of wrong information on the internet that says that you should never cut a flower spike from your Phalaenopsis orchid. I know many people understand that you can actually kill your orchid if you cut the flower spike. This is totally not true, so if you want to cut the flower spike because you just don't like it anymore or the flowers are gone, you can totally cut it. By cutting the flower spike, you'll give more energy to the orchid for producing leaves or roots, so you're very safe if you just want to cut the flower spike. Now, during the time your Phalaenopsis orchid is in bloom, you can also fertilize and water it normally. Repotting a Phalaenopsis orchid should be done about every 2 years. And this is because the medium can accumulate too much salts from the fertilizer and also can start to break down and become toxic. Also, I always like to repot brand new orchids because I'm not sure how long they stayed in that medium or if there are any pests in the medium that I cannot see. So after my orchid is done blooming, I like to repot it in fresh medium and keep the date on the tag so I know when I repotted it. Okay, so this is about it on the basics of caring for Phalaenopsis orchids. If you have any questions or I forgot to mention something, just leave me a comment and I'll try to answer for you. Also, if you want me to make other videos about other orchids or other aspects of orchid growing, just leave me a suggestion in the comment section and I'll try to do a video for you guys. So if you like what you see and you'd like to see more videos, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also visit orchidnature.com for more care sheets and discussions and photographs and all the goodies. Thank you for joining and I'll see you next time. Take care, bye!